Being a wonder kid isn't easy. We've heard it a million times. He's too young, and at times we all fall for the temptation of thinking, nah, it's time he takes the next step. Though most times it really isn't. The hype just takes over all of us. As humans, we are always looking for a fairy tale to be mesmerized by, and at times we forget that in real life, there's not always happily ever after. Today I present to you the most famous cautionary tale in football. Welcome to the life of Freddy Adu. Like many African-American athletes, Freddy's life didn't start in the promised land. For the first few years of his life he lived in Ghana, playing football whenever he could, at times with men who were 3 times older than he was. The big move came when his parents, who ran a convenience store, won the United States Migration Lottery and sailed off across the Atlantic looking for a way to provide better education to their offspring. Unfortunately, from very early on, it would be shown to them that their American dream could be very easily turned into a nightmare. Shortly after settling down in Maryland, Freddy's father would leave the family, forcing his mom to take on 70 hours of work a week in order to make ends meet. Adu found himself attending a private school with kids with which he had nothing in common, so football ended up being his way into the community. But just like in a fairy tale, the outcast child had a gift, and soon the school's coach noticed him and offered him a place in their squad, playing with kids who were way older than him and giving him a sense of belonging, setting the stage for our hero's incredible rise. Only 2 years later, as he already led his high school squad to a national title, Adu was seen as a player of exceptional technical ability, more talented than not only the kids his age, but also more than any player that ever went through the rankings in his high school. Mentally, it was mesmerizing, with coaches saying he had an innate ability to turn any situation into one of danger for the opposition. Everyone was under the impression that he had the makings of greatness in him. At this point, Adu was already being called up by the US Olympic Development Program. This was the first sign that something truly interesting was going on. 10-year-old Adu was sent to play in an under-14 tournament against Italian youth squads like Juventus and Lazio. Even if he only managed to be somewhat competitive in a tournament like this, it would have been impressive. But he ended up leading his team to victory, topping the goal-scoring charts and winning the Best Player in the Tournament award. Once this happened, Adu was seen as a more legitimate wonder kid, one who had gone through the tough trial of measuring up against international talents and succeeded. Playing against European opposition also allowed them to in a way let go of the stigma of being an American player, seen in Europe as a lesser talent from a lower level of football than the local ones. Several clubs came rushing in wanting to make sure the youngster would enroll in their academies. For a while, Inter seemed bound to win the race, but in the end, despite flashing buckets of cash at Freddy, his mom would have the last word, claiming she didn't want to sell her kid. Which sounds a bit harsh considering Inter had made sure the contract didn't require him to leave his family or even the United States. But it seems no one could change her mind, and so Freddy stayed. Over the next few years, he kept climbing up the international ladder, playing the Under-17 World Cup in 2003, scoring 4 goals in 4 matches, and convincing the country that he was worthy of being given a shot at the Under-20 World Cup right on that same year. But unfortunately, his performances wouldn't be the most impressive there, with some claiming that though talented, he struggled to play off others, lacking the tactical awareness necessary to be the main man of the squad. It was tough to keep a kid like Freddy home, and by the age of 14, it happened. Freddy Adu was taking part in the MLS draft. When facing the decision of pursuing college football or going straight for the millionaire contracts of the big leagues, Adu didn't hesitate. It's easy now to look at his decision and call it dumb, but back then, Adu was living his day-to-day life as a teenage sensation, witnessing his single mother struggle to maintain his lifestyle. He wasn't a greedy wannabe celebrity, he just wanted to make sure his mother could live the life she deserved. I think it's honorable no matter the outcome. At first he would be picked by FC Dallas, but a trade would be engineered so that he could stay close to home, eventually joining DC United instead, and becoming the youngest ever player to get a professional contract in the MLS. The hero of his own tale, Freddy kept on excelling, but this would unfortunately be the climax of his story, because it was at this moment that we all started to realize this wasn't a fairy tale. There was no shining armor, no conquest waiting for Freddy, because across the world, there were other aspiring heroes battling out their own stories, and if Freddy wasn't more willing to get it done than them, then this would become a cautionary tale, and slowly it did. From here on out, he kept on breaking records. If he played, he was the youngest ever to do it. If he scored, the same thing happened. Someone of his age at that level was quite simply unprecedented. Still, his time with his club was controversial, while some kept bashing his every move, saying he was far too young and had no business being in the position he was, that he was not yet there physically or mentally. And though these numbers suggest exactly that, only scoring a goal every 5 matches or so, it seemed that the hype was enough to get him where he wanted. Just take a second to think how insane it is that a player that was criticized that harshly made it into the MLS All-Star team twice, was nominated for the 5th Pro Young Player of the Year in his 2nd season, being bested by Wayne Rooney to the award, and even managed to win the league with DC United after 5 years trophyless. During this season, he also played his 2nd Under-20 World Cup, being named captain this time around and helping the US national team avoid defeats against Argentina and Germany. After this performance, Ghana even tried to get him to play for their first team, but he refused, as it was his goal to one day play for the United States national team and even maybe win the World Cup with them. And of course, don't forget, among all of this, he even got a 15-day trial at Manchester United, demanded by Sir Alex Ferguson himself, who had been interested in learning more about this player. Though nothing came off of it after problems with getting him a work visa arose, Ferguson made sure to say that he would continue checking in on the player and that if by the age of 18 it still seemed fit, they would make a move for him. After the 3rd year at DC United, Adu finally moved, joining Real Salt Lake City in a deal which involved several players and financial compensations. His time with his new club went by without much happening. The highlight of the season would come as he got his debut for the national team's main squad, and as he shined throughout the Under-20 World Cup, captaining the USA national team towards qualification, and even scoring a hat-trick against Poland in the group stage. These performances put his name in the spotlight again, not only for their quality but also due to the impressive record of being only the 2nd ever player to take part in 3 Under-20 World Cups, and very soon it would be finally moving to Europe, deciding for the wise move of joining Benfica for €2 million at the age of only 18, instead of immediately taking the leap into a higher profile league. Among players like Rui Costa and Angel Di Maria, it couldn't be more obvious that Adu was miles below their level. This move had been enough proof for anyone to see that Adu was not living up to the hype. After only 1 season at Benfica, he was being sent on loan after loan, with his role in the squad being taken over by Pablo Aimar. Looking back now, it's easy to see how this pursuit of game time might have been a bad idea. The seemingly never-ending loan moves certainly would take a toll on any player's confidence, and even worse on a player so young who is yet to make his mark and find his place in the world of football. But regardless, that's how it went. Our hero had now seemingly hit rock bottom. He was no longer in command of his own tale. He was by himself, in search of a redemption arc, but those don't just come by whenever one wishes. One must fight for them. But could Freddy fight for his? Well, first came AS Monaco. Pretty much nothing came off of it, and about a decade later, Freddy would call it the transfer that destroyed his career, saying that perhaps if he had stayed in Lisbon, he would have had a much different outcome. You see, at Benfica he went through 3 coaches in a single season, the team was in complete disarray, and he just wanted to get away from it. Now looking back, he even compares himself to Di Maria, who arrived at the same time as him but decided to stay, going on to become a world-class player. Freddy insists that back then, he had a better season at Benfica than Di Maria, though that could be at the very least debatable. Regardless, by the end of the loan, Monaco opted out of paying the buyout clause of $5 million, and Adu was sent on another loan, this time at Belenenses, who had been fighting relegation in the Portuguese league. This was easily his least successful loan, considering that after a managerial change in December, the new manager just decided he didn't want to even bother with Freddy, sending him back to Benfica. And back there they had found him yet another loan, deciding to move him to Aris in Greece instead of Hull City, who were also in a hunt for him. Once again, Adu didn't have much impact at his new club, and despite the contract mentioning an 18-month loan, after only 6, he would be flying back to Portugal. Finally, his last loan move came, joining Çaykur Rizespor in the Turkish 2nd division for a few months, before Benfica finally decided to pull the trigger and just offload him back to the United States. this time joining Philadelphia Union in a permanent transfer. If this last loan move to Turkey seemed pointless, at least we now know that it was his willingness to move to the second division in pursuit of some game time that convinced the US national team coach to call him back, in hopes that he could aim that same desire and energy towards a different goal. At this point, the overarching moral of this story made it obvious it was no fairy tale. Adu was surely going to influence football and the lives of other aspiring players, though not through his magic on the pitch, but through the mistakes that brought failure to his career. With him back at the United States, at first he got massive support, with the club's manager claiming that he was on the right track still, and that he had all the time in the world to succeed considering he was only just 22 years old at this point. Even Freddy himself admitted that by now, he imagined himself a lot closer to playing for an all-time great squad, rather than struggling to be a regular starter in the MLS. Though he still believed it was possible, but eventually he finished out the season there and then played out his first full season for one club in a while, getting his highest goal-scoring tally so far, with an incredibly underwhelming 8 goals in 28 matches. It just wasn't enough to convince anyone. If so far his career had been a disaster, from here on out it got to a whole other level. A move to Bahia in Brazil would come, and half a year later they were already done with him. At this point, I'm guessing he felt kind of hopeless, as he quite simply just went everywhere he could, asking for trials in hope that one of the clubs would pick him up. He trained with Blackpool, with Stabæk in Norway, and AZ Alkmaar in the Netherlands, and the answer was the same every time. They just weren't impressed by him. After this immense failure, he found another place to stay in Serbia, playing for FK Jagodina on a half-a-year-long contract. He played just one official match for the club before being released. At this point, the media kept on spreading rumors that his incredible underachievements were solely his fault, that he was partying every day and was closer to a successful career as a nightclub promoter rather than a serious footballer. Adu had had enough of this, so he went on Twitter and began ranting, telling everyone that these rumors were fake and that he was committed to becoming a serious footballer. Still, this would be a bit odd, as in former interviews he had admitted that his commitment to training wasn't the best at times. Over the last few years, he played for KUPS in Sweden, then returned to the United States, playing in the second division with the Tampa Bay Rowdies for a year and a half. What followed was a year without a club. At the point he nearly joined the Polish team, but soon after arriving, the coach referred to this move as a joke, since it was only the board who wanted to use his name for marketing, rather than actually counting on Adu as a serious player. After this painful year, he joined the Las Vegas Lights, aged 28. Adu admitted that he felt time had flown by him, that things didn't even feel real. He couldn't believe his career had gone by him without ever making it at the level he wished for. He said that at a certain point it felt like he blinked, and the moment he opened his eyes, a decade had gone by. It's hard not to feel for him. Very soon into his new move, he would end up being terminated and going on to work as a football coach in Maryland for 2 years. Even after all of this, he joined Österlen FF in Sweden, who had just been promoted to the 3rd division. Adu claimed he was still happy with the move regardless, saying that in the past he skipped a lot of steps, but this time he would do it right. This would have been kind of promising if it wasn't for the fact that he was now 31 years old. He quite simply didn't have the time it took to do it right. And despite all of that, the ending to this move would still manage to surprise everyone just by how messy it was. Just 1 month in, his contract was terminated. The club claimed he wasn't ready to be competitive, neither mentally nor physically. Adu claimed his termination was just collateral damage from a power struggle between the coach and the president of the club, saying that the coach told him he wanted him to stay, though eventually the coach would come out saying that he actually agreed with the board and wanted Adu to go, as he was just there because of his name, and was more of a futsal player than anything else. It really wasn't a nice situation to witness. I feel like Adu was put in a situation where he was made to believe that he was ready for the big stage too soon. And once he stepped on that same stage, it was too late. The opportunity to prepare himself for it was gone, and he was now doomed to live a career for which he lacked the mental strength and maturity necessary. From there on out, he had to experience the dazzling speeds at which the football market works, and he just kept on going down the rabbit hole, never finding his wonderland. By the time this roller coaster came to a stop, his time was up, and all he had left was a lifetime of dreams that never came true. So yeah, this was Freddy Adu's career in a video. I hope you enjoyed despite the kind of depressing ending, and yeah, I'll see you next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and yeah, bye.